Hey guys, it's Andrea. Today I wanted to answer a question that I see floating around the internet a lot, and the question is it worth it to sell on Etsy? If you're new here, I have been selling on Etsy for 7 years. It's my full-time job, so I'm obviously going to have a very biased answer to this question, which is yes. People always are asking, is it worth it to sell on Etsy? Should I even try to sell on Etsy? All this stuff. My very biased answer, because I am an Etsy seller, I'm a full-time Etsy seller, is that yes, it is absolutely worth it to sell on Etsy. I have two main, very simple reasons for why I think this is absolutely the case for any handmade maker that wants to start selling their products. Why it's an obvious yes to start selling them on Etsy. My first reason, to be 100% honest with you, is that there isn't that many reasons not to sell on Etsy. So if you have a hobby where you hand make stuff, like you crochet or you sew, and you're thinking about selling the stuff that you're making on Etsy, the first thing to really know is that the barrier to entry is basically zero. So this is one of my biggest reasons why it's worth it to sell on Etsy, is that there's really no good reason not to. Tech-wise, Etsy's platform is super straightforward. It's very easy to set up. It takes like 10 minutes to set your shop up and get an item listed. And then on top of that, the listing fee for an item is only 20 cents. So basically all you're in for whenever you start your Etsy shop is 20 cents and a little bit of time. Obviously, I understand that there's material cost and photography and SEO and all of these things, but if you're just considering Etsy itself, all you're looking at is a platform that's super easy to work with and a 20-cent listing fee. And so I really encourage you to not let the photography and perfect SEO and all of that kind of stuff stop you from just starting, because I think that's the part where people get so overwhelmed with like, is it even worth it? And I'm like, well, if you go ahead and try to map out the perfect plan for your business from the very beginning, you're never going to start anyway. And in which case it's not worth it, because that's just a lot of time and a lot of stress and all this stuff for something you don't even know is going to work. But if you are going to just try it, it is absolutely worth it. And I really do want to point out that there is no rule saying that you have to go full-time on Etsy immediately. Etsy is absolutely allowed to be a side hustle. It was a side hustle for me for 3 years before I really decided to take it full time and really invest a lot of time into it. So there's just no good reason not to. I really encourage you to just start. Just start, and I think you'll quickly find that Etsy is worth it because of my second reason, which is that there is a potential to make a lot of money on Etsy. So when people ask, is it worth it to sell on Etsy, what they really want to know is, can I make money on Etsy? And I think that there are several successful sellers that are a prime example of the answer to that question being yes. Yes, you can make money on Etsy. Yes, it's worth it. Yes, there's potential to make a lot of money on Etsy. One thing concerning this that I would like to note is that Etsy is not a get rich quick sort of thing. The barrier to entry is low. I would say that the kind of tech knowledge needed is relatively low. I mean, we're not like designing software. There is some research you'll have to do, especially dependent on how familiar you are with just computers and stuff in general. But like overall, the barrier to entry and the knowledge that you have to start an Etsy shop is relatively low. And so it's not a get rich slow thing. But I also think people hear the stories of like, I launched my Etsy shop and made $80,000 in 2 months. And I'm like, that's great, but it's not typical. So I just want to warn you that for most sellers, it's not a get rich quick kind of thing. It does take effort. However, I personally believe that the amount of effort that you put into it is worth it, and it is reciprocated back by the amount of orders and money that you make. So when it comes down to Etsy specifically, is it worth it to sell on Etsy? Not just is it worth it to start a small business, or is it worth it to start selling on Instagram? Is it worth it to sell on Etsy? I want to talk about Etsy specifically. I've already mentioned the fact that the barrier to entry to Etsy specifically is extremely low. So that is definitely something to consider whenever you're selling your handmade items online, because some other avenues, for example, having your own website, the barrier to entry is not low. There's theme cost and hosting cost and all that other stuff, whereas like Etsy doesn't have that. So that's super nice. The other thing that I think is a massive game changer for Etsy is the fact that they have their own built-in market. So a lot of people already go to Etsy to get what they need. So Etsy is already bringing in customers for you. All you have to do is figure out how to get your listings in front of the customers that are searching on Etsy, which is a huge deal if you're trying to sell items quickly or sell items just efficiently at all. So I definitely think that's not to be overlooked whenever you're considering if you want to sell on Etsy or if selling on Etsy is even worth it. So I definitely have touched on that particular benefit of Etsy before in previous videos. I sort of compare it to if Target were to be like, hey, we want to sell your product in our store. Then all you have to do, Target is already bringing in the customers, you just have to make your product stand out in Target. Obviously it's different than that, but it's a comparison of like, Etsy brings in customers already. And so that's a huge deal because all you have to do is get your items in front of them on Etsy. Anyone who's ever tried to sell anything knows that the marketing part is half, if not more than half of the battle. So that's a really big deal. So I think that definitely plays into whether or not it's worth it to sell on Etsy. And I think that it definitely makes the answer a resounding yes. I really do think that a lot of the times when people get caught up in like really just so afraid to start, it's because they're afraid of things not being exactly perfect. And I encourage you to combat that mindset at every single portion of your business. So there's a lot of times whenever you'll make mistakes. I still make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and that's just part of running a business. Unfortunately, you will not be able to know every single thing and every single turn that your business is going to take before you start it. So I think that that is one of the reasons why this question even gets asked. Like, is it even worth it? Because people are overcomplicating what it means to sell on Etsy before they even start. So I really just encourage you to start selling on Etsy and then decide if it's worth it for you. I think that if you put the time in, it absolutely will be worth it for you, but that's something that you have to decide and you will never know unless you start. One thing I do want to mention is that if you are a new seller or if you're a seasoned seller, I've created a resource called the Etsy Shop Scorecard. It's completely free. There's a link to download it in the description. It's basically just a checklist for setting up your shop to make sure that every section of your shop is completely filled out, which just really helps you a lot within the Etsy platform. So you can grab that at the description below. Like I said, I'm a full-time Etsy seller and I use this channel to share all the tips that I've learned on Etsy and what I'm currently learning on Etsy. So if that's something that interests you, I would love it if you hung around and hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching.